All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
clear, yeah.
Good stuff. Okay, welcome back. We'll try again, part 2. We'll keep an eye on the comments before we start talking again. Can somebody just make sure that they can hear us? Yeah, the comments are coming on. What's going on? Fingers crossed we can hear them clearly. I wasn't a fan of the Norman Collier. Fingers crossed. Tom says, hopefully we can hear you. So hopefully they can. Perfect sound for now. Loads better now, Steve. Fingers crossed. Okay. Yes, I mean, we are back, says Danielle. Much better. Thank you. Great stuff. We know that's a lot better. Yeah, sorry, I didn't look at the comments earlier on, unfortunately. So I didn't get a chance to see it because we know we've got that many stories to get through. Okay. Next half hour, obviously, we can look at a few of the players, I suppose, who played for both teams. Now, there's that many of them, essentially, that I thought I'll get the photographs of them, and we'll have a bit of a quiz here and see how many you can get. So, who's that?
Oh,
Grant
God.
Hanley.
Grant Hanley.
Grant Hanley.
Oh,
Yeah.
lovely man.
Grant Hanley, correct? Yep. So that's one down.
Speed Merchant. Batty.
Paddy.
David Batty. Yep.
Duff.
Duff.
No, it's Duff,
He was. On the day we needed him, he was Duff.
Andy Cole.
Andy Cole.
Yep.
Aye.
Yeah, good one.
Aye. Oh, God.
Bellamy.
Bellas.
Oh, who's he?
Shearer.
Never heard of him.
Don't know him.
Just about to spit.
Is that Kishnick Billy?
Kishnishvili, yeah.
Aye.
Well done. I knew that. I knew you'd get it. Like that's a pretty hard one. That extra point for his first name.
Mr.
George.
Zurab.
Zurab.
Yeah, Zurab.
Oh, Gillespie.
Gillespie.
Peacock.
Peacock. Danny Simpson.
Danny Simpson.
Yeah.
Well done.
And the last one. No, I've got one more.
Shane.
Yeah. No, I've got two more.
Danny Guthrie.
Guthrie.
Aye.
Yeah.
Jesus.
This is for a full house, lads. Don't let us down.
Howard Gale.
Yes.
Oh, well done. Aye.
Well done. Well done,
I
lads.
was looking up ex-players, and I didn't realise that Benny Arentoft went there in '71 from us.
Aye.
I'd forgotten all about that until I
Aye.
saw it. And then, yeah, it was like, I mean, there's some amazing players, some amazing links with the clubs in that respect. But when you go through the list of their players, they had some really good players whose names suddenly spring to mind who you'd forgotten all about, from back in the 70s and 80s even, so.
Aye.
Michael says no need to shout. Yeah, Glenn Keeley.
Somebody mentioned Glenn Keeley there, and do you remember the own goal he scored away at Middlesbrough?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bullet header from the edge of the box. He was never the same him after they took the bolts out of his neck, like, was he? I mean, Jesus.
Hey, don't forget though, he got to the League Cup final in '76, didn't he? In the home leg where he scored twice in that game. I'm not too sure. He definitely scored one. And I remember that game specifically because I was in the Gallagher end. And at half time, the crowd, and it was so packed, and at half time, everybody was moving around and swaying, and we were halfway behind the goal, and we were halfway up the terraces. And as the crowd moved for everyone to go to the loo, we got further and further towards the cinder track, and I actually stepped off and directly onto the cinder track, which meant my feet were at least 3.5 or 4 foot off the ground. I was literally wedged, and you could literally step onto the cinder track. It was so packed that particular day, and it's just one of those abiding memories of a night game in the dark, everybody moving like that, and the whole excitement, and then suddenly realizing that you'd actually gone forward and hadn't stayed on the terraces, you'd actually moved forward level as the terraces were dropping away from you.
Aye.
So packed was the crowd. And I mean, if anyone who was there in the Gallagher end in those days can remember, the drop from the cinder track to the terrace itself was a good 3-4 foot, you know. And so, you know, you think about it, and you think about crowd moving and swaying, and the way that we're packed in those days, but never any trouble on the Gallagher end, you know. We just enjoyed the atmosphere and enjoyed the whole.
I never know what there been any trouble in the Gallagher end, mate. I'm not sure what that like.
Plenty trouble in the league, Ian. There was trouble against Nottingham Forest, I'll give you that one.
Jesus.
Shefty Cucci's getting a mention as well. A lot of people talking about him. Matt Jansen, of course, a Newcastle supporter that played for Blackburn.
Yeah.
Any others? Is there any that I've missed out, or did I do pretty well there tonight, lad?
Leon Best.
Leon Best, that's another good shout. Yeah. He helped us out massively.
Kevin Gallagher.
Yeah.
And is that Adam Armstrong at the moment, isn't it?
Adam Armstrong. Yeah, that's another good shout. Okay. Managers, of course, a couple of high-profile ones.
Dalglish.
King Kenny there with the Premiership winning team sitting in the middle there. And, of course, one of our favourite pundits.
Oh, yes.
Graham saying out.
Graham saying out, exactly.
I've had to move my computer because it's just soured the milk in my fridge.
my phone, if I type soonness, it actually autocorrects it to sourness.
So does mine.
What's your memories of the ground and George of Ewood Park? Have you been down there plenty of times? Is it a ground you used to look forward to going to, or is it a ground you used to dread?
Only twice and no.
Only twice and no.
Well, my memory of the way at the end for the away supporters that I've been in was that it was the oldest ground, and therefore it was tatty. And in fact, the story I was telling about 17, 18 years ago, when by the time we got onto the ground, there'd been heavy rain, and people on the bottom level of that terrace were ankle deep in water.
Right.
It was absolutely horrible. So no, not fond memories of the ground. I mean, obviously it's probably all redeveloped now and much better. But I have to say that night, the people who were on the last two steps of the stand were standing in water, Steve. It was awful. It was pretty miserable. So no, not looking forward. You don't look forward to that sort of thing.
It's not like it ever rained there, though, is it? You know, I mean.
No. Well, that night it did from the game starting until it finished. It never stopped.
Your memories, Ian, of Ewood Park?
I mean, obviously, I've been quite a few times since the ground was redeveloped into that formation, and so you know that I think that the cup games in particular, when we got a bigger allocation. I mean, I think there was a game. When Shearer scored twice back in the late 90s, I think it was, and we won 2-1, there's with 30,000 there, and it was like a lot of Newcastle fans there that night. Like, you know,
was that when he did the Archer celebration?
I think it might have been. We won 2-1, and Shearer got 2, and there was about 30,000 there, and a lot of Newcastle fans there that night. It means that there was Newcastle fans in even the Blackburn parts of the ground, you know.
Yeah, okay. Mitch, what's your memories of Ewood Park as a ground? I mean, there were some great bars, wasn't there? You know, you could always get a drink, and I think Steve touched on this before. It was always a friendly place.
Yeah, I mean, the Fernhurst was somewhere. I gather they don't take away fans now, but they used to when we used to go regularly.
Yeah,
and they used to invite you in, and you always felt welcome there. It felt like your home bar. And they went out with their way to look after Newcastle fans. They always had bottle bars outside in the car park and tarpaulins up where you could get under. If people go and look on YouTube, you'll sometimes see. I think there's a big video of a loader with doing the Geordie Alouette still somewhere on YouTube underneath all the tops in the car park of the Fernhurst pub for one of those cup games. You know, and that was the atmosphere it created, and they welcomed you. You didn't feel any hostility at all. It's one of the few places you go where you don't feel it everywhere you go. I mean, some of the other bars that guys have mentioned tonight as well. I've been in a couple of them, and just welcomed in. It was no bother.
Yeah. For me, it's always been a good away trip. One we always used to look forward to, and as you say, the Fernhurst was definitely a favourite. Stu, what about you?
Well, the game I mentioned earlier, I don't think many people could hear us properly, was the Roy Wegley 93, I think it was, the 5th round. But just to basically say the same as what everyone else has, it was always welcome. They welcomed away fans because we come in numbers. And they knew they were going to get a good trade, to have a bit of banter. There was never going to be any trouble, and Newcastle are famous for having good sense of humour as well, light-hearted jokes and stuff. So that the bars would do roaring trades, we can drink lots and never have to have any bother with it. The next time I went down, it was only the second time, it's probably about 10 years later, when they had one stand that was getting developed. So they only had 3 ends of the ground, and they just had one stand getting developed. They give it a really strange, if we go back to the days where I used to go a lot of the Hearts games, Ewood Park was similar to Tynecastle. The way it was with the roofs on, the shed ends, etc. But this one, I think they'd either just won the league or they were just about to win the league. And with this stand, it felt really, really strange. They hadn't encountered a ground like that where it's only like 3 ends open. So I did enjoy the couple of times I went to Blackburn. You say we are very, very welcome. There's a few places like that around the country, to be honest. So it wasn't just Blackburn, but never any bother, and you could have a good supper, and they were welcoming.
Yeah, agreed. Steve, what about you? Any happy memories of visiting Ewood? Was it one of those places you like to go to, or did you dread it?
No, I enjoyed going. I enjoyed that, and that particular game that we mentioned earlier, with it as I said, it was always seemed a friendly place. But we always used to leave early to get the games when they were in Lancashire, and of course there's a lot of towns like Blackburn around there. A lot of the grounds very similar, the old mill town, the old sort of, the grounds were very similar. They were squared up and everything, and they were always welcome. Never found them imposing or anything like that. But as I say, we used to leave early, very early in the morning to get down, because one of the lads found a bar in Garforth. So it was like a halfway house if you were driving, where you could stop off and have everybody needed to go to the toilet anyway, that type of thing. So we used to go to this bar called Gascoigne's in Garforth, and Mick picked it just because he thought it was something to do with Paul Gascoigne, I think. But that was one of our stopping off places, And he must have been driving somewhere at one particular time and seen this place and stopped and went in. And of course, it did the big Yorkshire pudding with either the mince and tatties inside or the pork chops and stuff like that. So that was always get there early, ring up, get an order in, get some food down, and then head off on the last sort of few miles to get to wherever we wanted to be in Lancashire or in that part of Yorkshire, So we didn't often call into bars. Often we were getting there sort of like, 2-ish, 2:30. So we didn't sort of get into many of the bars in Blackburn. But once that the lads went to, we never really, never, like I say, they were always friendly. It was a good place. But I don't know whether it's nostalgia or what, but you tend to look back, like that photograph that you saw of Ewood Park, it doesn't look modern, but it doesn't look oldie-worldy. It looks nothing now. Whereas you normally go from like the real oldie-worldy, the traditional, one stand, maybe 2 if you're lucky, the terraces, that type of thing. And then you're into like the modern stadium, the ultra modern, or the Shed Pack Stadium like Borough or Sunderland or Derby or somewhere like that. At least they're still square. At least they've got independent stands like on that photograph and that type of thing, which I suppose gives it that sort of, different feel, different angle, different sort of ambience, if that's the word, if that's the right word I'm using. It's probably not the right word to use when you're talking about football, is it? But you know what I mean. And you got to remember with Blackburn, I mean, it was Jack Walker, wasn't it? That the money came from one man, really. One man rebuilt that football club, got them the championship, in the manner that they did for the Premiership and stuck his neck on the line at a time when, you know, you're not going to get anyone like that now that's going to go out and take a football club in the manner that he did, unless they're mega rich. And we know how difficult it is to find some people who are mega rich.
Mega rich.
Club, you know?
Yeah. As always, we like to look at some of the celebrity fans, and you know, some of these you can take with a pinch of salt. Some of them that might be genuine. You don't know. The late great Jim Bowen was definitely a Blackburn fan. He thought they were super. He thought they were super,
didn't he?
He thought they were super smashing great.
Yeah, partly speedboat.
Got that in one.
Lee Mack. Another Blackburn fan, supposedly. A time traveller.
Doctor Who.
Matt Smith, probably the most well-known one these days. And a famous snooker player.
Stephen Hendry.
No,
Apparently
he supports Hearts. He supports Hearts.
Apparently he's a Blackburn. Apparently he's a Blackburn fan as well.
Oh, two club man, eh?
Yeah, must have one north of the border and one south of the border. So he's a fan.
Glory hunter.
Bill Beaumont. Yeah, so there's your fans for this week. Not as many A-listers. Jack Straw's one, is he?
Jack, he is very much.
Said famous people in.
Another Jack Straw story. I was on the Criminal Justice Consultative Council, and there was a Cobra meeting with Blair in the chair, and Straw was the Home Secretary, and Straw had put the names round the table, and I found myself between two High Court judges, and I'm sure did it deliberately because one was the one that sentenced Joey Barton, the other one was the one that sentenced Stephen Gerrard. I'm sure Straw did that deliberately because he knew I was interested because we're involved in football. And that's the kind of thing he would do as well. So he is really a good football fan.
Barry Hogan's asking Steve, did John McNamee play for Rovers?
No, I think that's a different John McNamee. I think that was a James McNamee. And I think it was one of those where for some people called James get the name John. I don't know why. I don't know. It's like it's a northern thing or a Scottish thing.
That's right.
McNamee did play for Newcastle for Blackburn Rovers. I might be wrong, but I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah. I'm glad Scott Sellers got a mention, Steve.
Aye.
Yeah.
Scott Sellers came to us at a time when we needed somebody like him with what I'd call an educated left foot, and he did some important things for us, I thought. So I was glad he got a mention.
There was a young lad. There's a young lad played for Blackburn that was on our books first, who I thought had the potential to be, you know, one of the midfield superstars when we were bringing out youngsters left, right, and centre in that sort of Ardiles Keegan era, and that was Lee Makel. And he went on, he played quite a few games for Blackburn and set a career up before he went up to Scotland, but never really got the look in at Newcastle. But I think if my memory serves me right, I think his move was more to do with agents, you know, and I think agents at that time were just coming in and were starting to push players out, you know, especially young players. Look, we can get you a decent payoff, we can get you a decent contracts elsewhere, that type of thing. And I think if memory serves me right, I think his situation was one of those, you know, a contract coming up for renewal, and then an agent steps in and tries to push him out the door or tries to get him a big money move, which in those days would have helped the agent more than the player, you know. Now it seems to be agent and player equally when you see super agents that are there who are picking up, you know, I mean, more money than sense, quite frankly, when you see how much clubs are spending on agents these days. But that's that story.
Yeah, John, thanks for that. He says Stephen Hendry's definitely Hearts, but Blackburn Rovers' fan side claims that he's a Blackburn fan as well. But interesting times. Tom's asking if he's related to Colin Hendry, who of course played for that. You don't know, he might be. Big thanks to Darren Baldwin Funerals, as always, for the sponsorship, the local independent family business 24-hour service, and to John from QTechShop.co.uk for sponsoring the show as well. A couple of others which we haven't really mentioned a great deal of. I know we've just given Scott Sellers a shout out, but Kevin Gallagher, of course, another one. I know you mentioned him earlier, Mitch, but I mean, he was a good player, wasn't he, Mitch? Played really well for us.
He put a shift in and exceeded the expectation that we had of him when he came, and he did a role. He took a role on that we really needed filled, and he did what I love to see a player do. That he made a challenge to the manager. Go on, drop us.
Yeah,
you drop us. Take us out of this team. And he worked his socks off, and he played in the centre mid. He played wide. He played up front. And he would do the job he was asked to do. Never complained about it. And always seemed to put a good shift in.
Yeah,
I like the fact that he always made himself available to the rest of the team. He was one of the players who would accept the ball, sometimes in difficult situations, and not hide, because we who hide, they die when the ball comes to their feet. But he wasn't like that at all. I thought he was very brave sometimes, and took the ball, suicide passes sometimes just to help the team out.
Yeah, I think it'd be funny.
I was going to say on the 5-1 one there that Paul's put up there, that wasn't that the season they were won 5-1 at home and got beat 5-2 away?
Probably.
It was back in the early 2000s. Was it a 13-goal season versus Blackburn?
I was just going to say, I think the thing with Kevin Gallagher is Kevin Gallagher proved to us that as supporters, we just want people who try. And he certainly tried, and he became a hero and a legend at Newcastle United simply because he tried. He put the effort in game after game, and that's all we've ever asked for from players. You put the effort in, and you get the adulation that'll come your way. And we talk about a club that we talk about hope, and we don't want a club that wins. We want a club that tries. We want a club that all that type of thing. But from a player's point of view, or from a fan's point of view, looking at players that try, players that we know are putting a shift.
Yeah, the 100%ers.
We've seen so many at Newcastle who we've walked out the game afterwards and thought, not tried. He didn't try. So and so was shocking. Where was he today? But very rarely, if ever, did we say about Kevin Gallagher.
Aye.
Yeah, and too many times now I've been told who people think are good players, when in fact what they don't realise is the people on the terraces know who the pretty good players are. They don't need to be told.
Yeah.
I tell you one player who I haven't really touched on, and that goal, and a few people have mentioned him in the chat, is of course Ben Arthur. If I remember rightly, it was a pretty drab game, but what a goal that was. Can you remember that one, George?
Yes. I mean, he seemed as though he could do that every day of the week. He was so easy on the ball, and it was just unbelievable. Nobody was ever going to stop him, that's for sure. And he scored one or two more like that. But yes, that was a goal to savour and one to remember, no doubt about that.
Stu, were you there that day?
Can't hear you. Is that me, Steve?
Yes, Stu. Were you at that game? Ben Arthur scored?
No, I wasn't at that game. I was living in Tenerife at the time. But Ben Arthur was my son's hero. He loved him. All the shirts home, all 3 strips would get it with Ben Arthur on the back. And when he scored that goal, I remember I was sitting I took him to the bar to watch it, have a game of pool with him first, watch the games. And when he scored, just to see the little boy smile on his face and everything.
Yeah.
And he stopped supporting Newcastle when Ben Arthur left. It's what kids do these days, isn't it? It's not like it was, but a proper talent Ben Arthur. If only he had the desire and the commitment to fulfill his potential. He's genuinely a world beater, and I don't think there's anyone with the natural talent that's played for Newcastle since than Ben Arthur, and that includes ASM as well. ASM hopefully will give us more, as in commitment and effort, but for natural ability, as I thought Ben Arthur, I think George just said it there, on any given day, he was unstoppable. He had to pick those days, didn't he? It wasn't too often.
Stu's just remind me of something else about that game, Steve, and that was that I took me 2 adopted nephews to that match, and Hatton and Ben Arthur switched those 2 boys onto football, and they still love that football now. But it was that match and seeing Hatton and Ben Arthur that switched them onto football.
Yeah, got a good story about Ben Arthur. I got invited to into the director's box one particular game, and after the match, I was standing talking to Lee Charnley and his wife. And at that point, Ben Arthur came in with his agent, and Lee said, "I've just got to nip over and just there's somebody here. I need to chat this to." Ben Arthur sat on the little settee on the way into the chairman's suite, and Charnley was then deep in conversation with Ben Arthur's agent. So I looked over and I noticed Ben Arthur had a little they'd just been playing, and he had like a little haversack on his back. So when they finished talking, I nudged Charnley's wife and I just said, "Look, just play along to this, will you?" So when he came back, I said, "Did you see what happened when you went over to talk to his agent?" And he went, "No." And he went, "What happened?" I goes, "Well, Ben Arthur went straight over to the buffet and started filling his haversack with sandwiches and vol-au-vents and stuff." So Charlie goes, "What?" And it was at the time when there's been a lot of talk about Ben Arthur putting weight on. So his wife said, "Yeah, it did. I saw him do it." Well, Charlie was like, "What? And I said he had sandwiches, he had cakes, he had all sorts in the haversack by the time he left. And he was all set to go chasing after him to find out whether it was true, getting empty his haversack, when eventually the penny dropped and he realised that me and his wife had been winding him up about the sandwiches, But just at the time, I think he was getting an awful lot of stick about carrying a bit of weight and not putting the effort in. But people talk about Ben Arthur, and he was one of my favourite players, I must admit, because he had that sort of excitement about him. You didn't know what was going to happen next, and people used to say that he was a difficult player to manage, and that's always a good excuse, isn't it? Difficult player to manage. And what I've often wondered what it actually meant, Who was he difficult for? Was he difficult for his teammates? Was he difficult for his manager? Was he difficult for his coaches? Or was it just an all-round excuse because he was a maverick that the manager didn't feel as though was doing what he wanted to do over the full 90 minutes and taking away that sort of edge and that excitement out of the player's performance, But for me, Ben Arthur, that goal, absolutely tremendous goal.
I just wish he had been there when Bobby Robson was there, Steve.
Yes.
Because I think Bobby probably could have managed him.
Well,
I mean, he and I were at Everton when he scored
yes.
match at Everton, and that was incredible as well. It also leads us to another incident, but I'll have to keep that for another time because we're on the bit.
For when we get E, yes.
You said that, George. Well, Tim Robson would have managed them properly. Keegan, I think, would have built a team around him.
Yeah.
Aye. Oh, yes. Yeah, it wouldn't have been a case of he's not defending enough, he's not doing this enough, which used to get the whinge off the manager and others about his play. Bobby Robson would have stuck him in the penalty area, thereabouts, just doing damage. I'm sure he would, where, everybody else wanted him to do the lot. And Bobby Robson would have, as somebody just said there, probably would have took it to one side and said, "This is what I want you to do, son. Just do it." And then got his name wrong, of course.
Ian, were you at that game when Ben Arthur scored that goal? I mean, it wasn't the greatest of game, but it was just that one moment of brilliance, wasn't it?
It's just like a moment that makes a whole trip in it. Sort of hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It's unbelievable, but really, really, really good. I mean, another player that was like that. I think he scored in that 5-1. Was Robert. I used to love Robert. I mean, again, when it comes to people who work their heart out, Robert wasn't one of them. But I like Robert. He was touch of class. I think,
Yeah.
I like the way he used to address the ball when he was taking one of his bomber free kicks. He was like a bloody gunslinger. He used to clean his boots, put his socks straight, hitch his shorts up, and then, shovel into his shirt, and then wham. It's just like watching the gunslinger get ready to fire. Incredible. Lovely, lovely player.
Right, lads, we've reached that part of the night where you have to put a team together from the players. Now, Ian, you'll go last because you don't know anything about this, and it gives you the easy job tonight. And I know the lads will be prepared. Steve Hasty, we'll go with you first tonight with your team, and then we'll go to Stu after that. So, Steve, have you got your your team 4-4-2. You can pick a manager as well because we've got a couple of choices.
The manager, I always thought Tim Flowers was a great goalkeeper, and you know, I've decided that rather than the last couple of weeks, I try to be fair and I try to share this out. I'm not necessarily saying it would be the best team in the world, but what I'm saying is that collectively, I'm sure they could have put a performance in, and I would go with Tim Flowers in goal this week. I'd have Hendry as Colin Hendry as a centre half because I thought he was absolutely superb. As a leader, as a hard man on the pitch. I'm going to go with John Beresford as a fullback because Beresford for me because of who else I'm going to play. I often wondered what Hendry and Peacock would have been like together as a central defensive partnership. So in this week, I'm gonna throw him in. I think I'd stick Stevie Watson in that team as a right fullback. Wilcox wide with Ripley because those two for me were they made that particular Blackburn team, and I thought they were superb. And I would put Batty and Rob Lee in the centre midfield if I was going to play those two. And obviously, I would go with Shearer out front because that's only right. And his partnership with Sutton for me was an excellent partnership. So that's my shared out team for this week. And as a manager, I'd love to see Keegan manage that team.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the SAS up front, you couldn't argue with that. Great goal scorers. Stu, then, go on, mate. I know you've been sitting working on this.
Yeah, I have actually. I got put in the spot last week, so what I've done is I've put a team together that has played for both teams, not just like because So it's a 3-4-3 formation. So I've got Given in goal. The back three of Danny Simpson, Darren Peacock and Grant Hanley. Batty and Guthrie in the middle. Gillespie on the right wing. And then the left side was the hardest one to pick. I'd initially put Duff and then scribbled him out. So he was the most well-known. Then I replaced him with Gallagher. And because he's a grafter and what we just talked about earlier, 100%. Then I scribbled him out and put Scott Sellers in. With Scott Sellers, the one who scored against the Macklins in the pouring rain that time. So for that reason alone, Scott Sellers got the number 11 shirt. And I think the front three have picked themselves, which was Liam Best, Cookie and Armstrong. No, I'm only joking. Shearer, Cole and Bellamy. Shearer, Cole and Bellamy was the front three. And the manager I would have is Dalglish because he's obviously better than Souness and he won the league with Blackburn with some of the team that we mentioned there. So Dalglish is the manager and that would be my 11.
Oh, brilliant. Good stuff. George.
Thanks.
I'm struggling to get away from Steve's team. The only variant I would have on Steve Hastie's team is that I'd have found a slot for Scott Sellers and maybe fullbacks. Beresford for me was one of the best left backs we've ever had. So I would have found a space for Scott Sellers in that team that Steve picked.
Okay, good stuff. Mitch?
I went for an 11 who played for both. So I've got Given in goal, back four at Danny Simpson, Darren Peacock, Glenn Keeley and Damien Duff at left back. Then Batty at the bottom of the diamond with Gillespie on the right and Scott Sellers on the left. Kevin Gallagher at the tip of the diamond with Shearer and Sheffield Gucci up front. And the manager, Kenny Dalglish, with his coach and assistant who hasn't had a mention tonight, Derek Fazakali.
Derek.
Nice one. I like that.
He's had quite a few mentions in the chat tonight, which has been nice. But yeah, Derek Fazakali, of course, was the man behind Keegan as well, wasn't he? But what a coach he.
Didn't he play most of his professional career at Blackburn as well when he was a player?
He did, yeah.
Aye.
Yeah, he did. Okay, Ian, you get the opportunity to go last. So tell us who your team is.
Well, the thing is, I wasn't aware that I had to do this, so I've just been listening very carefully. So I'm gonna do a mix and match of what everybody else has been doing. But I think I would certainly go for Shearer and Sutton up front. But although I'm tempted with Les Ferdinand, mine, instead of Steve Sutton, Sutton, like so, Chris Sutton. Yeah. Yes. I think I would put Sellers on the left, and I would put Gallagher in behind the front two, and then I would put I think Lee on the right and Batty in behind there. So that would be like the four there. And then I would go for Watson. And I think I would do the matchup of Hendry and Peacock. I mean, I always liked Peacock, I always think Peacock ended up getting a raw deal because he was the one who stayed back and defended when Steve Howie went walkabout.
Yeah.
And he was
as well.
Aye. So and I think Peacock got a bad deal from the fans because he was the one that looked like the clown because the other defender was up the pitch somewhere, And I rated Darren Peacock. And I think between Flowers and Given, I would go for Given. Yeah. And of course, Souness is no. No. I think with a team like that, you would have to go for our Kevin is the manager, like our Kevin.
Good stuff, lads. It's always good to hear your teams and some really good options there with so much crossover between both squads. And Tom Lynch says Shearer and Ferdinand are devastating, and Les is only a tiny way behind Shearer as my favourite ever Newcastle United striker. I've stumbled across another Beatles connection, of course, a rather obvious one. Obviously, the lyric 4,000
goals in Blackburn, Lancashire.
Any idea where that came from? Then, Ian, you were first with it. Any ideas?
The news today, oh boy.
Yeah, but do you know what the lyric was about?
No.
Anybody?
Nope.
Interest? Well, it's John Lennon and Paul McCartney scanned the Daily Mail on January the 17th, 1967, and the article that caught their eye was there are 4,000 holes in the road in Blackburn, Lancashire.
Potholes.
1/26th of a hole. So there's 1/26th of a hole per person, according to a council survey. And so there you go. Things probably haven't changed a great deal since the Beatles wrote that lyric.
Steve, though the holes were rather small, they had to count them all, and now they know how many holes it takes to fill the Albert Hall.
Yeah, exactly. You're right there, Steve Bennett. He cannot contain himself because, as always, Thursday nights we do have the Three Amigos poster ready for tomorrow night's show, and I'll be back with Steve and Mitch tomorrow night. Here we go, lads. It's a classic. It's another classic from John from Jab.
Brilliant. That's my haircut from Cyril's in the 70s.
I've got a bit of a Yossa Hughes look about us, and I think Steve looks like the guy off Back to the Future.
Aye, the mad professor.
Yeah, good stuff. So that's tomorrow night, 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock, and we'll be talking all things Newcastle United. We might even start with James's question about Nick DeMarco. We'll have a look through Nick DeMarco's Twitter and come back to you on that one tomorrow. Lads, it's been an absolute pleasure. Ian, thanks for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed looking back at the Blackburn game. And Mitch, George, Stu, and Steve, I'll catch up with you guys again next.
Thank you for having us. Really enjoy it.
Cheers, lads.
Thanks, Steve.
And apologies to you for losing the sound, guys, earlier on. But thanks for the heads up. Glad we got it sorted out for the second half. We'll see you tomorrow night. Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers, everyone.